Hello everyone and welcome to this guide on how to build your own custom computer. While the main focus is the building process, we will briefly be looking over the buying process, the websites I recommend, and also how to make sure that everything is working when you boot it up. Alright, let's get into it. For where to look for your parts, I would recommend Newegg.com. I have been working with this company for years and I haven't had any problems with them. If I've had a part that doesn't work when it comes in or anything like that, they usually take it back and I've never had a problem with them, so I would recommend them. But if for whatever reason you don't want to go to Newegg.com, there is also Tiger Direct. I haven't worked with Tiger Direct as much compared to Newegg.com, but they are very similar in the sense of looking for parts. While they're sometimes a little bit more expensive, they're also a very good pick. So, to start things off, we're going to be installing the power supply first. The reason why I like to install the power supply first is because it's the heaviest out of the components usually, so that way you're not going to risk dropping it, and also the cables can get a little clunky, so it's always easiest to put them in there. So this is where it's typically located. While it can vary, they generally all have the same layout where you want to just nestle it in there and then install the screws in on the back. Next, we're going to install the hard drive. Similar to the power supply, it has its own area where you put it in. You can have multiple hard drives installed into your computer, and generally they're going to be in an area similar to this. Now, there are going to be some cables you're going to have to plug in. However, you need to first install the motherboard, so we'll get back to that once we install the motherboard. So before you actually install the motherboard, what you need to do is you need to look at your case and look at where there are going to be some little holes. There should be usually around, I'd say 5 to 7, depending on the motherboard. And you're going to want to install what are called standoffs. These are used so that way it'll keep your motherboard safe while your computer is running, and they're very easy to install. You just have to take it and then just screw it in. Once you do that, you can place your motherboard on top of those. Line them up with those holes that you see on the screen right now, and then just take the right screw and just install them. Before actually putting the screws into the motherboard, refer to your motherboard manual just to make sure that you're using the right kind. And once you have that tightened, but not too tightened, you can move on to the cable that you'll need to install for the hard drive. Now, the cable can sometimes come with the hard drive or the motherboard, but it's going to have a connection that looks similar to what this looks like on the screen for the port. You're going to have multiple ones of these, so just make sure that you have them right. So for example, if you have one hard drive that's going to be your primary, make sure it's in the right place, and then your secondaries are in the right other places. Next, we'll go into the installation of the processor. So before you actually put the processor in the socket, you're going to want to look at the underside of the processor and look for an arrow in the corner indicated right on the screen. And then you're going to look for something similar on the socket itself. It'll be embedded into it, so it'll be kind of like it's just indented into it. Once you find that out, you can put the processor on top, and then we'll talk about the CPU fan. Some CPU fans can be a little bit different. The most common ones are ones that lock into place by you pushing down onto them and then locking them into place, like the one that's seen on the screen at the moment. And then there's also another one where it latches on, where you have to take the latch and secure it underneath. And now that we have the CPU fan installed, we can now install the cord needed to power the processor. Now, sometimes it can be a 4-pin or an 8-pin, but typically it'll be an 8-pin connector. Next, you'll have to plug in the power for the fan. It'll be near the processor. It's usually not too far away. It's a little hard to see, but it's typically a 4-pin connector. Typically when installing RAM, it's one of the easiest components to place into the motherboard. All you have to do is find it on the motherboard, and it may require a little bit of force. RAM is pretty sturdy, so you're not going to break it unless you put an extreme amount of force. You just have to press it in and it'll lock into place. Occasionally, graphics cards require you to remove a piece of your case and place it back in later. First, you need to look for the notch on the graphics card, then install it to the corresponding port on the motherboard. Once the graphics card is inserted, plug in the power to it if it requires one. You can tell if it requires one by looking at the top of the card and seeing a plug on top of it. Next, you need to plug in the cords that allow you to use the power button, reset button, and any LEDs on your case. Each motherboard is different, and you'll need to reference your manual to properly install these. It's almost time to boot up your computer. Before you do, make sure each cable is connected and every part is secured. Leave your case open in the event that your computer doesn't boot up properly. Next, plug in your monitor, mouse, keyboard, and power cord. And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, it's finally time to see if your computer boots up properly. If your computer had problems booting up, make sure all of your connections are secure. If you still cannot boot your computer, you can look online for some solutions. Many people have had many problems, and someone else out there has more than likely the solution to your problem. If your computer booted up, congratulations, you've built your first computer successfully. And that about sums up how you build your own computer. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all enjoy your new computer.